Hello, lovelies. How you doing? Yeah, welcome. So my guy who is in the middle of the Kruger, bless him, he is, I don't know if I'm fuzzy. Am I fuzzy? How's the camera looking? It's been a while. Sorry I didn't stream last week. Being month end and beginning of month, I'm always just so like hectic at work that I just don't have the kayak, the energy, the zumba to like have a show. Forgive me. So yes, and wouldn't you know it, load shedding's back. And how was the rugby? I'm in my green and a bit of gold. But yeah, that was, yes, what an exciting game. Hey, when Urban took that, okay, and Warrior. And then afterwards they were all chums because that's how South Africans are, all cool. Yeah, Nia lekker. Hello, everybody. Hello, Nick. Hello, Lynn. Lovely to see Fiona here. Welcome. I'm sure you've been on before, though. Yes. So lovely to see you. I'm just waiting for my dear guest. Just checking the WhatsApps. He says his internet keeps going down, but we've had him on before. So go back on my videos and check. We've had like long streams where he is so fascinating and all his experiences are so incredible. And he's just got such a wide, broad, like band of knowledge. Like he's a fountain of information on all aspects. So yes, so that's sort of where I was headed to this evening, and now my guest unfortunately is not with me, but he will. There was also talking about the Kruger. There's also that guy Chris Tosi. I don't know if I've said it right. It sounds actually naughty. It's spelled Tosi. So you could say Tosi. Nee, maar in Afrikaans noem hulle ons dit 'n tolly. Ja. So Chris Tosi. Um and he's apparently doing the walkings of the Kruger National Park to raise funds for charity. So that's quite interesting. And yeah, he was, I think, on the Gareth Cliff show about a month or so ago. I'm just trying to, yes, I tell you, it's so hard getting used to a new phone. My phone collapsed and, well, it died. It was so full, and I actually blame one of the platforms, Telegram, because apparently Telegram you're actually supposed to have on your PC, not on your phone. And yeah, so that's what happened there. So yeah, we're a bit sort of stuck now because now I wanted to talk wildlife, and yeah, my guest hasn't arrived, but not a problem. So when last was anyone else in the wild, in the game reserve? I tell you, in Pretoria, they're amazing places. Near the Voortrekker Monument, there's like an entire Groenkloof Nature Reserve. Also in Moraletta Park, there's another place. You can go walk, and there's bokkies and zebra and ostrich. Just don't get scooped, eh? Don't get scooped, because those things will scoop you dead. And that's that. So, yeah. So when last was anyone in a game reserve? I hope no one's gone to a zoo of late. Hello, Debbie. Lovely to see you. Welcome. Um, all right, just pop in and say hello. No, I get it. Work is busy. Hello, Nick. Lovely. It was lovely meeting you. Everybody, we went to the meet and greet in Pretoria on the 2nd, and it was great fun. Unfortunately, I was the one sort of said, well, look, let's meet here. And I'd never seen it so busy. I've been there like 3 times before, and I'd never seen it so busy. And we got there, and it was musa packed. Also, I suppose it's the end of the month, and it's a Friday, and it's like people are feeling springy and letting go of winter, so it was very busy. But I think Chris had a good time. I think our guests, the people that were there, had a bit of a good time. He's incredible. He plans his way around all the tables and greets everybody. So he's really cool. I'm sure most of you now have also met him. I know Debbie was also at the meet and greet I went to it at Emperor's Palace. I had to take Chrissy's bags back because she said I've been spoilt. I've seen him 3 times now. Yeah. I just want to check. Oi, I don't know if our guest is going to appear. I see his internet's still down. He hasn't answered a message. Yeah, all right, let's check the comments, people. Let's see what's happening with you. Alrighty. I don't know why it does that. Like all the settings, you try and make it shh, and it still wants to talk to you. Like, isn't that the worst when you're in a movie or you're in meetings and you think you've put it down and suddenly ding, 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 ding. It drives me insane. Okay, wait, what does Debbie say? Focus. Most wild was my cat bringing in a Stuart Little. Shame. Oh, but he's just trying to give you a prezi. Like, I remember house sitting once and this cat brought me 2 mice, one after the other. Like, every morning I woke up in the house, there was a mouse at my feet. Apparently it's a sign of, like, presence. Like, they're trying to say thank you for looking after me. Cameron says I live in a concrete jungle. No, listen, Cam, compared to cities like New York and London town and San Francisco, I think San Francisco still has a lot of beauty. They have the ocean, but I think, like, okay, New York does too, but I think we don't have a concept of concrete jungle. No, really, that's just scary stuff. And Fiona, how are you feeling this evening? Have you ever been to, when last were you in a game reserve or some sort of when last were you in South Africa? Because you're in London at the moment, aren't you? You're overseas. I don't know if I've got all the information correct. But yeah, so maybe that was my guest. No guest. Oh well, so let's see. Okay, so Friday was the meet and greet. That was fun. Then we still went jolling afterwards. Oh my soul, I have not been to a nightclub since before, like, 2019. Or maybe we have. Have we? TG? Have we been to a nightclub since then? I can't recall. No, like, we've been to a bar, restaurant, but this was like a proper nightclub. The first place, TG and my other friend were having a jaw. And I mean, the skirts were short, yo. Short. Like, I don't know, if I had a daughter, I wouldn't let my kid dress like that. I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of a prude, but Clint says she's certain when this guy and his girl were dancing together, he was doing more than just dancing, because that skirt was so short. But yeah, who knows? And then we went to another place, and there was kind of gemiddelde mense, people of our own age. And I didn't feel like so old. Also, I'd worn these shoes that were pre-2019, and I had reason I hadn't worn them in so long because I forgot how much they hurt me. Yes, they heels like this, and I'm like, owie. So yeah, walking in them was horrendous. I'm really sorry, guys. I'm really sorry that my guest can't seem to log onto the internet. After all, he is in the middle of the Kruger National Park, and he does rely on obviously having his Wi-Fi. I hope he's okay. Maybe it's load shedding. But he did confirm that he didn't have load shedding at that time. But we can always have him again. Hello, Leon. How are you doing? Lovely meeting you. Yes, as well. Was on, or did you manage to fall off them? No, I fell off them proper. In fact, I kicked them off, and I boogied. We did a bit of boogieing. And just as I was enjoying myself, it was time to go home. And then I looked at the clock in the car, and I swear it said 11, but it only said 1 o'clock. I was seeing double at that time. Yeah, not a good idea. I said, like, these days I'm such a lightweight, not really in real life, but like when it comes to drinking, I'm so unaware of drinking that, like, it doesn't take me a lot to get sloshed. Really, I'm a cheap date. Promise, I'm a cheap date. Fiona, what you're saying? I live in a small market town called Wisbech, quite near Cambridge. A 5-hour drive to London, if one ever had the inclination to do so. Ah, yes, I see. Very nice. I've got a friend. In fact, a friend of mine went to London recently and traveled all around. Went to all the tourist attractions in London with her kids, and then they went to Cornwall, which was lovely. And yeah, I think it was, what was that at the time? Dunwall? No, I think it was Cornwall, and I'm not sure on the other one. But yeah, they had a lovely time. So yes, and how's the heat now? Is it cooling down, Fiona, or is it still hot as balls? Yes, hot as balls. Buzzy, what you saying? Hi, Leon. Yeah, it was lovely meeting Leon. It's been amazing. Met Debbie, met Nick. Who else have I seen? Met Henk. Met a few people. It's been really, really cool. What's GTSY? You guys talking code now? Okay. Well, you two were sitting quite close to each other, so you obviously have a whole new code now for YouTube. Okay, that's fine. Cameron, I was at the Empress Palace in Boxburg as it's set up and gave Chris his banner for his future meet and greets. Yeah, and he was proudly had that banner on. And the ball spectacular on Friday night was just hysterical because he'd sat down, and as we got the menus, he took out his glasses and his glasses were broken. And you could just see he was like heartful. He just didn't want to deal anymore. He was like, really, is this my fate? Is this my luck? Is this what's going to happen to me now? Like, could it be any worse? Is anything else going to go wrong? And I said to him, no, just chill. Maybe your night will get better. Yes. And it did, as we all saw. Okay, someone's teaching me how to pronounce it. Wisbech. Okay, Wisbech. All right, you learn something new every day, people. You learn something new every day. Cameron says, I'm confusing Emerald City, Emperors and Emerald Casino. Okay, no, for sure. That's for sure. Did you realize that Dumo was so tall? I nearly fell over when I saw how tall he was. Yes, and large man. I'm sure he used to play for like A-team rugby at some points. Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to meet him in a dark alley. And if he was very cross, no, definitely not. And me, people go, oh my God, I can't believe you're so short. Oh, good heavens me. Yeah, no, it's all an illusion, people. It's all an illusion. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I realize like the guest is not happening. It's not happening anymore. We're not doing it. It's just not happening. I don't know what to say. It's too bad. It's very sad. Oh dear, and someone's sending me naughty jokes there, Laurie, while I'm watching the stream. Okay, hold on. You see, he's saying. Okay, now the message has just come through. So maybe we'll. There he is. There he is. Hello, welcome.
How are you doing, Ruth? Hello, everybody. Great. Sorry, a little bit of knock-on effect from our load shedding on the data.
No. Yeah, that's fine. So yes, we haven't seen you in a while, and I'm sure seasons have changed and things are definitely moving around where you are. And what's changing? How is that sort of transition from a winter to a summer now? Like, how do you see the difference in the animals?
Yeah, a lot of it's already begun with the vegetation, which is great. A lot of the marula trees and blackthorns, which is a kind of acacia or what's now called the Vanchelia, start producing fresh leaves. You get like that early spike of growth, which is great because it will affect animals like the browsers particularly. So elephants, kudu, those kind of things, giraffe, get an early bonus versus your grazers, impala and blue wildebeest and zebra. So ecologically, great time of the year. It's still not too hot, although we've had 1 or 2 really warm days already. And you can feel the weather's not like Cape Town, but it's hopping in and out of being hot, warm, cool, cold, up and down. So yeah, I mean, spring has arrived, and you can see it in the trees primarily. Also some beautiful trees called the weeping boer bean, the Scotia brachypetala, which produces edible flowers, but you got to get to them quick before all the insects get in. So yeah, the low velds starting to look good. Grass is still super dry, so it's still a bit of a brown landscape now with these emerging nice green patches. So yeah, all the impala females, the bulk of them all pregnant. So in about 2-3 months, we're expecting a whole lot of impala babies, lambs to pop out. So all the predators will be
the lions are working up an appetite, and the leopards and How did the cheetahs fare? I always feel sorry for the cheetahs because they always they are brilliant, but they don't have the strength of the big cats, you know?
Yeah, I mean they're like a really specialized cat, and like in terms of the species, they're quite far removed from their distant cousins. So even their species name, Exynix versus Panthera, shows you how far removed they are from their cousins. So that's why you never see any horrible stories about people trying to crossbreed cheetah with other big cats, like you have seen historically with tigers and lions, and you end up with liger. So yeah, cheetah, super specialized, everything. They've got protracted claws. So they're a sprinter. That's their game. They're a sprinting cat. They're really good at it, and obviously very maneuverable. And surprisingly, they can take down fairly large prey. And then also, they're one of only 2 species in the world of large cats that will work in groups. Obviously, lions being number 1 in terms of being in prides. And then with cheetah, the males generally form coalitions. So you'll get a 2, 3, 4 male coalition of cheetahs, and that works in their favor. You often see how that kind of thing works for cheetah. So the more cheetah you have in the game, particularly all the famous footage when you see Thompson's gazelles and all of that kind of thing up in East Africa, down to our impala and the Lowveld or springbok in the drier areas. They're fair game for cheetah. Surprisingly, cheetah can stalk. A lot of people don't think they have to run from a distance to get there. They when they need to be, they can be quite sneaky. So yeah.
Okay, so I've listened about the animals. I've seen my cross Yorkie, half cat, half Scotty, crawl to catch a pigeon. So I'm like, hey, listen, anything goes. I'm sure if a dog can do it, a cat can. Yeah, all cats do it. Yeah. So yeah, we shared that article that now the government is finally, well, I'm sure it's been for a while, but cracking down seriously on poaching and smugglers and all sorts of stuff. So what's been the latest breakthrough on your side with regards to any sort of outing guys that are doing this?
So I was at that conference where that article comes from. That the Mail and Guardian, I think it was Cherie Becker published, and everything. So obviously, it was quite a biggie because the state was, and I'm not talking about the police, so don't get me wrong, I won't speak for the police, but the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, Environment, which is the overall body, and Frances Craigie, who's quoted in that article, is the chief director. So she's the big boss of wildlife law enforcement, in fact, environmental law enforcement in South Africa. So everything that she said, you can take as gospel or biblical in that article. So some trends that are good to note, increase in sentences. And in fact, just for everybody's interest, we are exceeding in South Africa wildlife crime sentencing versus the States and Europe. So in America, most poachers, and people say poaching in America, there's plenty poaching in America. Also, a lot of it's tied, unfortunately, to the traditional Asian medicine market. So a lot of it's bear poaching for bear. Yeah. So America doesn't normally award a prosecution with more than 5 years for poaching, whereas we are obviously exceeding it by
10. Now we're doing 10.
Yeah. So our average is 10, and in some cases it's double that, and even a little bit more than that, 24, 32. And yeah, it's just this. It's a good sign in terms of the seriousness. And also, I don't know if we mentioned last time, cases like this take a long time to work the system. And unfortunately, South Africa's judicial system is not super fast, and a lot of people complain about it. But you know what? Having worked with Americans myself and everything, they've got the same problems, and we are speeding up, which is great. We are speeding up. The Skakuza court issue, which was very topical when the former deputy judge president of Mpumalanga tried to have it shut down or moved to where was it, to Hlala in the community. That failed, and it went all the way up to the Constitutional Court. So we have a Green Court sitting in Skakuza. And right now, if I remember correctly, the stats might even be in that article, there's about 20-something active cases for rhino poaching. Yeah, so there's some good news stories, and in South Africa, often we get used to hearing bad news stories, and we kind of generalize. So things are stabilizing a bit. Obviously, there's less rhino. The level of effort to poach rhino is higher now. The risks are higher, and the systems at the Kruger and some of the other reserves are paying off. Our big, sad problem child is still in KwaZulu-Natal, unfortunately. And obviously, I think everybody knows that a dear friend, Anton Mzimba, was assassinated a few weeks ago. And he was the head of Timbavati's Ranger Services. So that is kind of now undoubtedly for many people. And the fact that Prince William commented directly on his loss from the British perspective, or the Royals' perspective, also points out that this is real crime. The greatest challenges we face is the witnesses can't talk. You can't invite a lion or a rhino into the court to say, that guy killed my brother, or something like that. So the non-human aspect of it is a big challenge. So but things are improving. Improvement in the forensic side. Thanks, Debbie. I saw.
Rest in peace. Yeah, she supports sandparks. Arbod is saying poaching is extreme in Limpopo. You're saying it's worse in KZN?
Well, rhino poaching numbers. So we've also got to be clear about what we're talking about. Rhino poaching in KZN. And obviously, people like Anton Mzimba being targeted, they're being targeted for a reason. Because they're champions, and being champions, they protect specific, in that case, a private reserve. And the Timbavati had, for a while, had a record that could not be beaten, other than maybe the Sabi Sands, but they'd not had a rhino poached in 3 years. So he was seen as a central figure around deterring and disrupting the poachers. So, it's hit the Lowveld quite hard. There's a lot of people that are very concerned that the syndicates are escalating, just like you would expect in other forms of crime. The syndicates are escalating. I mean, we've lost police in the last few years. We've lost Anton now. So things are, and there's also things that we don't see, obviously, that are not reported or everything. So there's a real trend of concern for ranger well-being and safety right now.
It's scary stuff. And how's the recruiting going with new guys coming in? You find you getting more and more guys, or is it just plateaued? I mean, you run the school, right, for wildlife. Just talk about your school again.
So in terms of the Wildlife College, yeah, we've got regular courses, and actually have had quite a lot of training in the last few months since we last spoke. So there is still a demand for field ranger training, and positions are out there. So no, it hasn't plateaued. It actually slowed down a few years ago, and then obviously COVID hit it, and now we're kind of back on a trajectory where and I mean, there are other training institutions out there, but we train specifically for field rangers, the canine capability as well. So that was one of the things that came out of the conference. Into Africa, the growth of canine capabilities. So lots of parks in the rest of Africa are understanding that. And if we look at even figures going back to about 2018, about 80% of the success rates of arrests in the KNP were due to the utilization of canine assets, service dogs, tracking and trailing poachers, and obviously eventually outrunning and tiring the poachers out, and everything like that. So that is a growing trend. We expect to see more of it into Africa. You can, for the techies among, you can view it as old tech being applied in a new way. Other reserves are kind of, in national parks, are rethinking of, the use of horses for mounted anti-poaching work. So there's quite a lot of growth, particularly into Africa, with utilizing dogs, horses, and also it's tied to improved animal health. These days, the amount of good veterinary science out there, that you don't need to be a vet in Akagera National Park in Rwanda. You can get all you need from a vet to keep your dogs going for a while without having to try and travel 4 hours to find a vet. So there's these little important wins that sometimes we underestimate. It's not all about guns and boots on the ground. Sometimes it's great work behind, and well, not sometimes. A lot of the time it's things like veterinary science is improving. That's enabling our capability to deal with criminals. Yeah.
No, and I think it's so important to educate oneself. I mean, it sounds silly. I mean, the other little dog she's a bit older in age. She's more long in the tooth than the other one. And I realized, like, I just dropped not a bark, good heavens, a K at the vet. And then I thought to myself, she probably needs an anti-inflammatory. And then it was a Sunday, and I thought, I'm not paying Sunday prices. Let me phone my pharmacist and find out what I could give her to help with the anti-inflammatory. She had swollen glands, and he gave me literally pediatric medicine for anti-inflammatory for kids. So, and he said, just give her 1 ml and, twice a day and blah, blah, blah. So that was really, like, helpful. You talk about the health since obviously the lockdown, did poaching at all did the lockdown hinder the poachers at all, or not really?
No, it did. It certainly did. Like in the Lowveld in our region, the poaching events themselves dropped, and we can attribute that mainly because in our region there were proper roadblocks. So restriction of movement means restriction of criminals moving product, and also being able to access the park. And where there's corrupt staff in reserves and parks, it's also hard on them to go and pick up their buddies. They might not be the poacher, but they could be the transporter. And then that transporter drops those poachers off somewhere. So that's kind of some of the poaching tactics side of it. But they were definitely deterred. And if you look at the figures, you can see the spike after the hard lockdown. So the hard lockdown definitely slowed poaching down. Then the other angle, yes, we know less rhino, but what we also expected with the lack of flights. So I might use an insensitive word here, but so drug mules, like for heroin out of Thailand, and there's been quite a few South Africans who've who are doing time for that kind of
Yes, they are.
crime. So rhino horn mules couldn't get out of the airport because there's no transport. So attention was then placed on air cargo that was still able to move, not human beings, during that hard lockdown, just to check what was going into containers and that kind of thing. Some positive news, if I can jump from COVID. So Professor Larkin at Wits University has just done a proof of concept for, and I know people are probably going to go, for radioactive nucleotide injections into rhino horn. And it's so far, the proof of concept has shown that it's not dangerous to the rhino. But if the rhino gets poached, and globally there's probably 10 to 15,000 radiation detectors at airports and ports around the world. So if a radioactive rhino horn with those isotopes goes through a detector, it will go off. So that's now part of the demand side. Obviously, in my work and in the training work and the work that we do with even others like specialist prosecutors to get them up to speed in terms of how they learn to deal with wildlife crime. Remember, although we're prioritizing it, when you prioritize a certain crime, you also need the skill set beyond just the ranger and the first responder to the crime. You need good investigator skills. So the IOs or investigating officers need to know what they're looking at in order to build a good docket. Then that docket has to go to the DPP or the NPA, the specific prosecutor, and that prosecutor themselves must be able to look at the docket and says, yes, I can prosecute this case. All of that value chain, right through to the magistrate, requires insight into wildlife crime. So that's the other area. There's a lot of work happening, is to build that capability within our justice system to have well-trained, well-educated, and we're not saying the prosecutors are not well-educated. They've all got LLBs. They're all qualified. They know their game. But as soon as you prioritize a new crime, you have to build capacity towards it. And so we're in that phase right now. We're building capability. We're building capacity. And I think that will pay off. And if you're being really honest, and I know lots of people don't like hearing this because they want a hard and fast answer, it's going to pay off in a few years' time. It's already paying off. In some of the cases, we're seeing the sentencing changing. So that trend should continue. And in fact, hopefully we then see a downward of cases because good sentencing or good prosecution acts as a natural deterrence, not just us on the ground with firearms and all of that. That's a form of deterrence.
Yeah, sure. Because they're like, hey, I don't want to pay for that crime.
Yeah.
And do the time. I just want to read some of the comments. So hello, Amy. So I don't know if you've heard of a lady called Fiona Timms. She says, I worked for the game capture unit in Umfolozi with the National Parks Board. I'd love to come on sometime with you. For sure. We could definitely do that. She also says she reared a 2-week-old baby white rod for 18 months. Okay, well, that's great. That's great there. I mean, how many of these are they, like, how are these people vetted? Like, you can't obviously just be someone and say, okay, I'll look after the baby rhino. You know, these rescue animals, whether they be giraffe or wildebeest or, you know, these animals, these babies that are sort of left to fend for themselves, these rescues. They are obviously set places, like nurseries.
Yes. Yeah, so the rhino orphanages, I can't say how many, where and where, but yeah, they are vetted. They establish formal relationships with their respective parks boards. So Izimvelo KZN Wildlife obviously Sandparks or Kruger specifically, and other regions. So rhino orphanages are a great tool, because one of the ways that one can address positively, and like let's stay in positive thinking, is to return, rehabilitate, if there's calves that have had a very traumatic experience, a terrible experience, is to return those calves to the wild, and they contribute back to the wild gene pool. So that's your first win. The work is not easy. It's not cheap. It's emotionally demanding on the carers. And there's a lot that goes into it. I think a few people have seen Bon de Bod's documentary, where they touch a lot on rhino, and there's some very, very well-known people out there trying their level best on that end. And I think that's the important thing also to realize, like Professor Larkin is doing his bit. There's a place for everybody to get involved and support and kind of at least protect the species. And this also goes for the work that's happening with pangolins. It's also going towards work with some lions and those kind of things, trying to do their thing. So I'm really chuffed for Fiona and the guys that they are involved in doing their thing, because it's critically important. It can't all be about law enforcement. As much as we all want to maybe punish a criminal, there are biological things that can be done to support the species. And obviously, we want those calves back in. The nice thing about white rhino, when they are happy and okay, they breed well. And that's why we know some of the guys that are doing mass breeding of rhino can do it, because rhino respond well once they're in the right breeding condition and they're healthy. They breed well. So that's probably also why we are kind of holding the line a bit on white rhino now. And it's great to get the calves back in. And in fact, if I remember correctly, recently there's been a release of a calf. I can't say where and when, but it might even have made the media as well, back into the wild. So, and when I say a calf, not a youngster, it's probably now sub-adult and can function on its own. And what's wonderful about rhinos is often a mother with a calf, a little calf, will sometimes adopt a non-related calf, sub-adult, from another, who will join them, and they'll form a little bit of a unit for a while. And that kind of process that's kind of standard rhino behavior, but definitely contributes to the species. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good news. Rhino orphanages play a huge role. We just got to be careful about how the information is shared, and that's not shoot on people's privacy and not share and not be open to the public. It's just purely operational security.
Yeah. No, for sure. It makes complete sense. Well, you see what Laurie said there now. Can we start a petition to cut cabinet members' salaries by 90% and giving it to the game rangers and conservationists instead? I 100% thumbs up that idea. And Debbie Morioso, just totally in awe of all the work that you do. Again, Laurie, on a daily basis. Yeah. So tell me a little bit. Have you ever had a serious encounter? Look how serious you are. Ashel, relax.
No. Yeah, no, I'm listening.
My biggest fear, is a slung, is a snake. We were in Zim, and we were walking through I don't know if it still belongs. I don't think it belongs to my aunt anymore, but her tobacco farm. And my cousin and I went and checked where a tractor had fallen off the one ravine. And I was walking along, and I swear, I don't know, maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me, but I saw what I believed to be a night adder. And I got so scared. I was Yeah. What are some of your close encounters with the non-legged kind, or do you handle everything? Like, are you looking up at your boxes? Have you got terrariums on your wall there?
No, 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 no. No. Yeah, I'm looking up, thinking of just memories. No, I have been bitten by a snake, and I had to be
Really?
treated. But that was 20 years ago. I got bitten by a cobra on the back of my calf. We were actually, funny enough, speed tracking on something
Mm,
that we had to try and catch up with in order to help it, or at least get a view of where it was going.
mm,
And the tracker was running in front of me, and I was running behind him, and he scared a snake. And then as he passed, the snake reared up, and as I couldn't put on brakes on time, I saw it hooded. It was a Mozambican spitting cobra, and it whacked me on my calf. But at least I was going fast enough, so I only got one fang in. And then, yeah, I had went to the doctor in the town of Shishlui in KZN.
how long did
Klufuri.
it take you to get there? Like, did they airlift you? Did you have to
No,
yacht?
no, I realized, and so part of the thing with snake bites, if you ever, and I mean, also depends on the species. So I knew what it was, and the biggest thing is, yeah, and because I've been there, I can say, don't let your heart rate go up. Slow
Mm,
down. Of course, I was running, so my heart rate was high. I called the tracker, stopped, said, "Now we've got to stop doing whatever." And I'm going to walk back to the vehicle carefully, and then you get onto the radio. We had a handheld, tell the guys we've been bitten by a snake, and have a vehicle ready. And then I had all sorts of crazy injections
mm,
and everything. And
yeah.
yeah, within 5 days, I was okay. It burned like hell, that's for sure. So I knew I'd been envenomated, but not enough to kind of cause long-term problems and everything.
Thank
But it
goodness.
also depends on the kind of venom. You know, there's three major types, and yeah,
What's it?
neurotoxic.
Neurotox. Yeah. Okay. You go ahead. Yeah.
No, no, no.
I was
You carry
trying to
on.
sound clever. No. What's it? Cyto,
Yeah,
neuro, and vascular. No. Okay. You carry on. That's why
hemo,
you. Yeah.
hemotoxic, and then you get combinations, which a lot of people don't know. Like some cobras species have a little bit of a combination of neurotoxic and cytotoxic. So cytotoxic, your adders, because they're slow
Mm,
after they strike. So if they whack a rodent and they bite it, the cytotoxic venom helps them in digestion. The mouse will keep going for a while and then will be
mm,
overcome by the venom, and the adder will track it, find it, and then obviously swallow it. And by then,
mm.
the cytotoxic venom has helped the digestion process. It's the same if you ever get, if you're not trained, don't do it at home. Never pick up a snake, because that's why people lose thumbs and fingers and things like that, because they don't ID the snake properly. And it's a good chance there'll be a puff adder in South Africa. And then once it bites you, the local tissue damage that you get
Yeah.
is quite significant. And that's why
Mm,
amputations, if you do get to the doctor late, amputations are kind of a real thing, particularly with digits and things like that. So snake handling, if you, I know some people have snakes as pets and all that, great. They know how to handle them. But the best thing to do is keep still and slowly move away, just like you would with a lion initially. If you bump into one, don't try and be a hero. Yeah. So you just got to be careful. Yeah, and I mean, obviously with kids and all of that, you just got to, yeah. Um, that's one of the first things with children when they grow up in the bush. They learn from their parents about snakes.
yeah. No, it's definitely something. I mean, is it true that you should like tie off the limb? Like, does that
Mm-mm.
help? No. So
No,
that's wrong.
no. So first aid has changed a lot in snake bite. What you can do is wrap a tight bandage around, but not as a tourniquet. That should only be done by specialist medical people who've received the patient who's been bitten. They can figure out whether they should or shouldn't. But now it's more about slowing down venom moving through your lymphatic system. So wrapping a bandage tightly around the area, and you kind of start away from where the bite is, and you move down towards the bite. So if you're going to lose a limb, you'd rather lose a limb than die. So you try and contain the venom. And this business of cutting it and sucking out the venom, all of that is urban legend. It doesn't work. Other things that people say, cut it, then urinate on it. No, throw milk on it. If you envenomate, it means it's in your system. And again, keep the person calm, heart rate down, because that's a big thing. Obviously, it also depends where you're bitten. If you get bitten by something on your upper body or around your head or face, you need a doctor quickly. And that's where, getting an airlift or whatever is a good thing. But don't. The tourniquet thing often has side effects. So if you keep it on too long, you might actually kill that limb anyway, if it's like a leg, because you cut off blood supply. So there's other reasons why. So the triage thinking now is you treat symptomatically. So if the person starts passing out, you keep them awake. You check on them. You do all of those kind of things. So snake, and even now with the better anti-venoms and things that they have in hospitals, a lot of the time the doctors will do the same thing. They will treat symptomatically. So if it's a neurotoxic venom and your heart rate is continuously spiking, they will treat you for cardiac arrest to manage your heart rate and everything like that.
No, it makes sense. I see we can go longer. I don't know if your internet's gonna last. I don't know what time you've got load shitting. I actually completely forgot that I bought, when they started doing it again, that I bought a little UPS. Completely forgot. I thought, and then TG reminded me, no, hang on, we've actually got a UPS, so it's okay. So I was like, oh, okay, right. But we don't use it, it's like just as a backup. But so talking about like now, one thing I want to know. So you're in the Kruger, okay? The Kruger is technically massive. It's the size of Israel, which is actually small, but it's big. But so let's say you're injured in the Kruger. What is the longest waiting time any help could get to you, do you think? Like with the systems in place today, with radio and satellites and whatever, are we talking half an hour? An hour?
Okay, so normally when there's an issue in the Kruger, it depends what it is. So if it's a critical issue, the section range in the area will be notified. So here's a situation. Let me rather paint it like this. If you're in a camp in Kruger and you have some kind of medical emergency, obviously you'll engage the camp staff. They'll contact the section ranger. The section ranger will contact Skakuza, depending, or possibly Palabora, and they will arrange kind of like either a vehicle or a helicopter to come through. Depends if it's also in the day or night as well, to come and collect you. So it's all very dependent on the kind of injury or your condition. So there is, for example, a doctor based in Skakuza. And then if you're a little bit further north, they'll access one via Palabora. And we often have ambulances going in and out to collect people as well. So it just depends. So like critical stuff, they'll arrange. I mean, there's several helicopters in the Kruger. The section range will make the call. If it's during the day, they might just come and pick you up with the doctor, there's also paramedics at Skakuza, whose roles, they are sandparks. Their role is to primarily service injured rangers and guests, obviously, and dogs and everything. Because, there's doggy first aid as well. You can do a first aid course for dogs. So there's all sorts of things. And then if permission is granted, they might allow a flight in from Nelspruit or Zanin or something like that, but completely dependent again. Half an hour is a bit not likely. And it depends on what camp you're at. But yeah, I suppose the main thing is where you are based, and making sure you make contact with the camp management. This is if you're a guest. Staff, obviously, it's actually pretty much the same thing. We like where we're based, we're on the Central Kruger and the Contract Park National, the Contract National Park area. So it's a 45-50 minute drive if you driving normal speed to get to Hoedspruit. If you're willing to go to Tinswallow, the public hospital, you can kind of do that route. And obviously, it sounds terrible. It gets down to whether you have got private medical aid or public medical aid as well.
Yeah.
But the group will help you. You will get treated regardless. The first responder and possibly the second responder will do their level best for you. That's not a debate. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I see Arbot. So Guardian prepping apparently Israeli bandages are God mode. And I know that they've invented some fancy, like sticky stuff where instead of using stitches,
I
they
know
like
what
put
he's
something
talking
on
about.
and they pull and it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can get a similar thing in South Africa. It's called Celox, CELLOX. And it comes in a packet, varying sizes. You pour it into the injury, and it creates like a false flesh kind of material that helps stop the bleeding. And obviously, the Israelis and I think the Americans pioneered a lot of it based upon combat conditions. So if you couldn't get troops out, if the helicopter could not reach troops in a tactical situation, and the medic had to make a call and say, no, this guy is going to die. They were looking for, bandages.
Tampons.
So
one paramedic I recently spoke to said to me, no, like he literally carries Tampax wherever he goes to stop stab wound, put holes and stuff.
So as an old army medic myself, that was our nickname. We were called tampon tiffies because we carried tampons around in those days for that specific reason, and everything. But unfortunately, tampons leave cotton in the injury, so the likelihood of post-treatment infection grows. So as much as the humor is still there, things like Celox are totally neutral, and it buys you time. It's easy. You can search on Takealot, look online. I keep it at home here as well. So yeah, I haven't really used it lately, but when we've had people, field staff doing field work or maintenance, they actually accidentally chop themselves with the panga. It's great stuff to have on hand.
Okay. I don't think you could get it from your local Dis-Chem.
No, you can order it on Takealot. It is available. It's just not well known. The other name for it, you can get what they call hemostatic bandages as well. So those utilize similar properties like Celox, and that's closer to what I can't remember. You mentioned the Israeli one, Guardian prepping.
What was it called? The God mode. I don't know.
Yeah. So those are the same thing, hemostatic bandages, and all those do is not just stop the blood. Like, so the traditional triage rule is that you put pressure, not too much because you also don't want to do damage, but if you have to, like if it's on the upper body and you've got to break ribs in order to keep somebody going, okay, you don't want to push ribs into the lung, but if you've got to put a bit of pressure that creates secondary injuries, then yeah, that's triage. That's triage 101. Hemostatic bandages use the body's natural way of clotting to slow down the bleeding naturally. And in fact, if I remember, the technology even works for people that get cut in hypothermic conditions as well. So very useful stuff. Look on Takealot. I'm not, by the way, I have no shares in Takealot. It's just because they deliver. And funny enough, I've ordered some Celox via Takealot, and they've delivered here. So, yeah. But you can look at it online. There are various brands and everything.
No, fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah. See, you learn stuff here on Rebellious Ruth, people. You learn stuff. So I don't know if you've seen in the media, there's this new movie with what's his name? He played in, I don't know, Idris Elba. He's now got this movie called Beast, which is now about these big lions.
No.
And the other guy who was in, what a load, right? What? We're gonna watch the show. Ashwell, let's do this. We'll watch the show eventually, or you won't watch it, will you? And we'll debunk all the bullshit that came out of Hollywood on that.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the trailer and knowing how lions move and all of that stuff, I was like, no. I mean, I'm quite surprised actually that a movie like that has been made.
Right, like it seems a bit Jawsy. Like, what are they trying to do? Like, I don't know, like scare people away from coming to visit beautiful places like safari. Can you just imagine all these Americans bringing in their guns on their safari?
I mean, it's I mean, if there was somebody from New Metro or Ster-Kinekor or one of the production distribution houses online now, I'm sure I'd get a finger wagging at me, but I'd say no. I mean, that kind of thing. Yeah, we know historically there's been man-eating lions and that kind of stuff historically. Sure, East Africa, lots of stories, a couple in South Africa, but you know, the bulk of the man-eaters in the world right now are in India, and they're actually mainly leopards. So I think some of you may have seen there was a leopard attack recently of an old male leopard attacked a staff member of one of the lodges in the Sabi Sands.
Yes.
That's when you most likely going to have attacks. There's an animal that no longer can feed itself, number one. Right. So think about the behavior, and you look at the carcass. You look at the animal, go, oh, this animal's teeth are worn out. It's in poor condition. It's struggling to sustain itself. Desperation kicks in. All of us would do that.
Goes for easy prey.
Yes. And unfortunately, a person was attacked and injured, and the leopard was dealt with. But this is not a hunting situation. It's a safety situation. And if we don't, if we don't respond, of course, nobody wants to shoot a leopard. Nobody wants to kill a leopard, but the leopard's old. And it would have been taken out eventually at some point. And remember, a leopard that makes it to 12 years old, like human years, that's a long time. The wear and tear on wild animals, what you get out of domestic animals versus what you get in the wild is very different. Desperation, I feel sorry for that leopard. I feel sorry for the person that attacked him. No, nobody wants that situation, but it does occur. And in the India comparison, the problem in India is there's less natural prey around. So their man-eating or predation issues are driven slightly differently. So goats feature strongly, lots of domestic stock. And then occasionally, unfortunately, a young Indian child, maybe in a rural village setting walks outside to go and urinate. I'm not talking about big urban centers like Mumbai or New Delhi. I'm talking
let's
rural
think
areas.
Jungle Book scenario. Jungle
Yeah.
Book scenario. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah. Like I mean, it's terrible. It does happen. And a lot of people don't know the leopard, as we know it in South Africa, is as a species is the most widely distributed big cat in the world. I mean, it occurs all the way into Malaysia and further afield. And just for everybody's interest, and I don't want to whack another movie, but there's no such thing as a panther. When people talk about panthers, like, no, no, no. A panther is just a black leopard, or could possibly be a black jaguar. It's a form of melanism, like black pigmentation.
Right.
Just like you can get other kinds of pigmentation in other animals. I recently saw a picture. I can't remember what species of monkey. Oh, it was a Simango monkey from St. Lucia, Smangaliso Wetland Park, near Richards Bay. And there was this mango monkey that is leucistic, like very white in its color and everything. Not quite an albino, but moving with the truth, fully functional, all of that kind of thing, you know. So yeah, a lot of, again, urban legends around things like panthers and all of that. And of course, I think everybody have seen that the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries, Environment are starting to act against breeding large cats. Well, there's a public policy call out there, a gazette for it. And people are trying to breed panthers. They wanted a black leopard, so a trophy hunter could hunt a black leopard and say, hey, I hunted a panther.
You don't want to know one day I'll share my thoughts on what I look. I suppose if you really want to feel lekker and you want to go and hunt, and if it's for a good cause and yada yada, and it's mostly, I don't see how getting your rocks off shooting one of the biggest cats in the world, most beautiful cats in the world, you know, gets your melon hard. You know, I don't understand that theory, but anyway. Like an impala, a bookie, you know, whatever. Yay, okay, fine. But to shoot a cat, please. Like, you must be suffering real low ego if that's gonna turn you on. But yeah. I see I've started the load shitting, and I know that this no, it's fine for now. I'm gonna have to watch that battery, because last time I was streaming with this particular computer and the battery just cuts and says bye. It doesn't even let you say we'll give you like 55 minutes or something. So but any other questions in the comments, people? I know Laurie was asking about the poaching, and we were saying that it has so Laurie, slightly before, we were talking about that they've now increased the penalty for poaching and smuggling and all of that. And there's always poaching, right? There's always crime when it comes to wildlife. The Asia influence is massive. Let me just find things again.
So let me just elaborate a bit for Laurie and the others. So remember, and this is kind of one of the challenges where it's about educating ourselves. So there is a lot of subsistence poaching, which is about livelihoods and people that, unfortunately, it can be a really horrible thing to find when you find a dead impala in a snare, or if there's a snare line, as we call them, in a reserve, etc. So that kind of poaching is still prevalent. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. We've got to distinguish, the species, who we're talking, pangolins, general game, that kind of thing. So there is a fair amount of poaching like that happening. Could be tied to COVID. It's not an area that I've kind of had time to really think about and all of that. But we do know people are hungry. And yeah, there's a huge number of people that border the Kruger. One lesson to share with everybody, that kind of poaching increases towards Christmas. So orders are placed for meat, and because bush meat still comes in cheaper than normal meat and retailers and things like that, poaching gangs will go out. If there's anybody from KZN, they know they'll use dogs, etc., snare lines, that kind of thing, to catch a general game primarily. Like the biggest they generally go for is probably a blue wildebeest, maybe a zebra. There are some side, unfortunately, collateral damage. Sometimes they get a cat or a hyena, or maybe even a giraffe gets its leg stuck in as well. So it's unpleasant. It does still happen. So, Laurie, on that side, yeah, things unfortunately are still happening, but we do need to address it, because there are reasons why that's happening. And those reasons are not quite the same as the traditional Asian medicine market for horn and ivory and pangolin scales and all the other weird stuff. And of course, lions. So again, I think last time we spoke about this, lion bone has become a proxy for tiger bone. So because tigers they are still trying to farm them industrially, but part of the marketing pitch, these guys have been very innovative. They've been very innovative in how they market. And what they say is kind of, lion is just as strong and is just as powerful as tiger. So please buy some lion bone wine, or the sale of the claws. So, that used to be a big thing in the heyday of big white hunters in South Africa. Well, not in South Africa, but everywhere across Africa, and the British colonial period in India as well, is to get tiger claws. And then you'd have that famous brace necklace of claws of the number of the big cats you shot. So ornamentally and that kind of thing, teeth as well, lion teeth, they fetch a good price back in Asia, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a difficult one. It's a different demand. I'm not saying I'm lighter in my view, but when people are starving and the country is not necessarily working properly, as earlier the comment about ministers' salaries and things like that, people.
Yeah, I was thinking about that on the way home. I went, stopped at the shops. It's both my boys' birthdays tomorrow. Both the men in my life have their birthday on the same day, funny enough. So I just went and popped and got a cake. And you see these workers working home from being on site, and you think, if let's say minimum wage, which is now just over 4,000, it's so sad. It's heartbreaking. They literally can't afford to catch a taxi to get home. They have to walk. They've been, working in the hot sun all day long, and then they have to trap home. And it's just like, it's just killed. And then you see these fat cats, and it just drives me insane. But to come just quickly full circle, you spoke about Professor Larkin, who's putting this nuclear isotope in the horns. When it eventually, even if it's, let's say it gets through, what will that do to our greedy Asian counterparts?
To be honest, he hasn't published that phase of it, but
I'm melting.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think it probably likely won't do much. The thing is its primary purpose will be to be detected at the airport. So even though we've lost that rhino, the horn still serves a purpose, that we can catch the perpetrators. And remember, team, how the law enforcement end works is it's deter, and if you can't deter, then you've got to disrupt. So this kind of thing, disruption is key. And by like these kind of initiatives and innovations that people are trying all sorts of interesting things, as long as it doesn't harm the animals, doesn't impact day-to-day natural behavior, etc. If we can disrupt, and that means if it gets through South Africa, but is somehow detected at Kuala Lumpur coming in through an airport there, we know they're getting tighter as well on this kind of crime. I'd rather they still grab the guy there who's doing the pickup and sort him out there. So we have to make sure that the disruption continues. So Larkin's work will have benefits all the way through. Now, with a lot of isotopes, you can also make them incredibly unique. The range of radiation types in terms of isotope variation, if I remember my science properly, is varied. So once it's detected, they could also return it and then match up the isotopes. So then they could say, oh, this was isotope or 25003, and they could link it to they could link it to a specific rhino. So I think some of you probably know about the RODIS program, which is DNA matching, where when a rhino is dehorned, and there's been a lot of dehorning as a deterrent as well. So there's another piece of information. There is now proof that dehorning is acting as a practical deterrent locally within South Africa. Occasionally it still it doesn't work, but we're seeing that dehorning is working in many ways. So when a rhino gets dehorned, they take a portion, a shaving from that horn, and they send it to a laboratory, and that laboratory will then do a DNA match. Now, if that rhino gets poached, when its horn regrows, and unfortunately every 2 to 3 years you've got to consider dehorning again as well. So the RODIS system allows, it's sad, it allows, if a seized horn, one of the first things you do is you submit another sample, and with that sample you should get a match, hopefully, on the database. Then you'll know where that rhino was dehorned, when it was dehorned, who the rhino was specifically. And then that helps with the prosecution and investigation, because then an investigator knows, okay, that horn, which was recovered at the airport, matches this rhino, and a dehorning Cameron's sense of humor.
Yes. No, in fact, I was gonna say, seeing the Chinese rip everything off, can't we make our own rip off of horns and teeth, and then just
they're very good at figuring it out. I mean, for a while, it's been a while now, I think about 3-4 years ago, and I stand to be corrected, 3-4 years ago, somebody was saying they can 3D print rhino horns to look almost like a proper rhino horn. But when you've got it in your hand, now, and that when you've got it in your hand, you'll very quickly figure it out. It has a certain scent, a certain smell, and also when you hold up rhino horn to light versus fake, fake usually shines yellowish, brownish light. With a rhino horn, it shines red, and that's because of obviously circulation that feeds the horn as it's growing. So that gives it away straight away, and that's how these traders and retail guys in Asia are able to kind of very quickly figure out this is real, this is not real. So until they figure that out, I don't know how 3D printing will help in it.
What about, there was this, I remember this, what happened to the purple toxic spray for the consumers of horn, where they were painting, I remember this, they were painting, maybe it was a farce, maybe it was just a media hoax, they were painting the horn blue or purple, and then the horn would become like almost toxic for further end use. I remember, but this has to be about 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that sounds like it was quite a while ago. There was a potential move to um, inject horns with poison and everything, and there was a big battle around that. That's more recent, and I think there was some scientific work that was done on that disproved it, that it wouldn't have value. So I don't, yeah, I don't, I'm not sure what's happened since then, but clearly it hasn't taken, because we would be seeing more stories about it in the media as well. And also, if you think about it like functionally, practically, if you spray a horn bright purple or pink and it's in the bush, the poacher's going to still see it, and it's going to stand out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I think the doel, as they say, of that was to make sure that the horn becomes obsolete to the end use product. I think that basically they couldn't use it in their muti get strong medicine.
Yeah, I'm just the absorption rate. I think that's probably why it failed. The absorption rate would not be that high unless you literally drill the hole in to the rhino horn. Spraying on the outside, they'd probably be able to shave off, which is what they do. So also remember the the market in terms of it being a prophylactic and all of that stuff is much bigger than a male enhancement.
The ED. You mean the ED? The ED.
Yeah. So that market is actually quite small. The big market is actually.
How's that for a pun? Quite small. Yeah.
So that market's quite small. The big market is actually for libation cups, so like a little soup bowl, or beads. So we've done some training here. I mean, now things have changed there, but for Myanmar, which obviously has had a coup with their military as well, the last 2 years or so. But we did some work with their forestry department, and I'm kind of like just giving an example. There, poachers would poach Asian elephants, and for everybody's information, Asian elephants, you've probably noticed in all the photos, all the footage, Asian elephant tusks are always smaller, generally, comparatively to African elephant tusks. And the quality of the ivory is not as good as African elephant tusks. And obviously, we've got the two species of elephant in Africa, the bush or savanna elephant, and then the forest elephant. Now, the poachers you'd come across from China into Myanmar, they kill the elephant and they skin the whole thing. They skin the entire elephant. And you find this big pink carcass lying in the bush, well, in the jungle there. And what they do is they'll take that little bit of ivory, of course. And remember, ivory is like a tooth. So what you see is only a portion. It's a bit like an iceberg. So they get in there and move it all the way to the nerve ending, and then you get this longer piece. But their main market there is elephant skin. Just like we went through that phase of donkeys in South Africa that were being slaughtered for whatever. I think it was.
But that wasn't so long ago, was it?
No, and then a whole lot were killed in Lesotho, I think near the Sani Pass as well. And but that I think they eat. They want some kind of I can't remember what it is. It's a byproduct of the donkey skin, and they also skin the donkeys. With Asian elephants, they skin them. They then cut the elephant skin.
Gelatine. It's called. They want the gelatine from the donkey skin. What is wrong with these people?
Yeah. Okay. So there's another one for everybody to hear. So and they eat it, if I remember correctly, in some kind of soup. And remember shark fin soup? There's a lot of gelatin in it.
Yes, same thing. In fact, I'd like to find out where all this collagen, lately, like like the little housewife. Oh my God, I got a wrinkle. I better go and have, take my collagen tablets, darling. I've seen a wrinkle. Like, apparently a lot of it comes from sharks. And it's
Yeah,
actually, there's now new evidence that it's not so good for you. It's actually not so good for you.
yeah. I
Apparently.
mean,
I might be wrong. I need to investigate more, but I heard something the other day that, yo-ho, hold the
yeah. I
phone.
mean, I think, uh, well, yeah. I mean, between collagen injections and things like that, there could be a range of, yeah. That's why a lot of the pharmacological companies um, uh,
Okay.
don't talk
I'm still
about.
here. I'm still here. Just
Uh,
someone has to get past.
oh, okay. Um, so yeah, the overall, you've got some weird things. So getting back to the elephant skin, they cut it into blocks, about this big, size of a half of a cell phone, a smartphone, and then they take it and they dry it. And once they dry it, they then get it to a certain stage. They treat it a little. I can't remember what they treat it with, and eventually they carve with some machine tools. Obviously, they machine it and they carve the elephant skin into perfect balls, about this big and sometimes smaller, depending on whether it's a male or female. And then you can buy an elephant. It's going to sound funny now. You can buy an elephant ball bracelet. Funny, but not funny. As
Not
well.
funny.
So,
Not
yeah, and that's the poaching in places like Myanmar that still have quite a few elephant. Their Asian elephant population is not bad, but yeah, like I've said before in previous chats, it's quite a difficult one politically, but because the what do you call it, the Belt and Road Initiative, the big economic initiative that China wants to connect itself to Europe, also via Africa, and build this massive infrastructure to encourage trade and movement of goods. And so people are probably going to say, I'm a racist. I'm not a racist. I don't dislike the Chinese or hate them. I do have a problem with their governments because they could take a stronger line from a policy and political perspective. And yes, I have a problem with the social cultural practices, like that needs attention. And I mean, at that conference that we were at 2 weeks ago, we raised it. Many of us raised it, said, the social cultural practices thing. Culture is, no culture is static. That's what I always say to people when they ask me. I always say, every culture is dynamic. And if we just see the difference in our culture from us right now, what we do look forward to, what we associate with versus what our grandparents did and our great grandparents did. I know from my grandparents, my great grandparents boiled all the food. That's how they cooked back then. I was like, well, we have to advance, and I'm not. And that's the thing, is that a lot of this stuff is inappropriate considering where we're at with biodiversity, the
Yes.
challenge of climate change, all of those kind of things. We need wildlife for our own survival. And I think that's the key thing, that like the message. I got asked a question at that conference. If you had a genie lamp and the genie popped out and gave you one wish, what would you ask for? I said, I would ask that the Chinese population would change their way of using wildlife completely. And I kind of put a caveat and stop encouraging illegal wildlife trade, because poaching is just one component. It's the whole trade, which is
Yes,
the problem.
it's the consumer. It's the consumer's belief in the demand for the product that is the problem. It's the same with the tabloids, with the paparazzi. It's the same with plastics. It's the same with. We can make a whole list. It's yeah, and in fact,
Yeah.
that's what I think the UN should stop with all their boba masses as well, with all them trying to think they're stopping wars and what. Why don't like, if there is that kind of money, stop an educational process, to educate, because that's where the truth lies, in education. Bring people
Absolutely.
over to Africa and let them see these beautiful creatures, that exist in the wild and debunk these stupid things that they help with prophylactics and make you beautiful and forever long lasting love and all this kind of bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah.
I
No, I
just
mean, no, for sure. The number of clips I've seen, and it blows my mind because it's not cheap either when it gets there and gets processed. But the number of people, and like that Vietnamese minister who said that rhino horn stopped his cancer. Oh, that did nothing for us. It just suddenly Vietnam said, "Oh, one of our ministers has said it helped him with his cancer," and you kind of think it's statements of stupidity. So let me be undiplomatic, completely like that can really hurt us and hurt our efforts at countering it. Because to be honest, we don't want to shoot people from our local communities, like you said, who are looking for
a meal,
socioeconomic opportunities in their lives. Things like that. We're tired of shooting our own citizens. We're tired of shooting Mozambicans. We're tired of hurting people and filling up jails. It's actually all very unnecessary. There are drivers of why it's happening, and I think people have commented. Like it's really not we're not solving the problem. All we're doing is knocking off people or arresting people and filling up our jails with people that are at the bottom of the value chain. We can keep on doing this, and I promise you, we committed to keep on doing it to stop them. But we need action higher up, and
like you've said, and like you've said before, all crime is interlinked. What was that? Just before you go, we're gonna probably end off, and I don't know. Listen, I could sit here all night, as you know. But yeah, so that film that you were talking about that they put on containers. Remember to kind of identify carbon monoxide. What was that stuff called again? Trafficking of humans, if you can remember.
It's an American invention. You need to use a dog with it. So what you do is, like in Durban, many of the modern containers these days have an air vent, which is normally circular, and some of them depend on the kind of containers, because not all containers are the same. Some are refrigerated, some are not. So you'll see some like have a mini AC on the back. What you can do is you remove this it's like a gel-like substance. I'm just trying to remember the name, but maybe at the next session, because I know who uses it, a colleague that I know uses it, and you basically put it on in a hygienic way. So you don't use your hands. You put it on to the vent, and you wait a period of time, and then you remove it, and then you just pass it to the dog. And the dog will sniff. And if there's human beings inside or something dodgy that the dog is trained to detect, because remember, canines these days are trained to detect everything from firearms, explosives, through to ivory, rhino horn, various drugs, and all of that kind of stuff as well. So if the dog then gives you an indication that there's something in the container, then the port official can physically open it, so crack open that container, have a look inside, and that's how we kind of picked up human trafficking and other things as well. So that's the that's the kind of approach, and it's like what Larkin is doing. We're getting better at figuring these things out. The problem is, like a Durban, which handles a bulk of South Africa's container traffic, it's hundreds of containers a day, and when it's working really well, it probably exceeds that into the thousands, or maybe not thousands a day right now. But you can only take a sample. You can't do it for every single container. And I'm sad to say it to people who are listening, you can't do every single container. We'd never have all the movement. But what you can do is you get smart about it, and use it both proactively and reactively. So if you get a hint, like during the insurgency last year in KZN, or that ammunition disappeared in a container, and they figured out, they realized that in the Ports Authority, somehow that container was removed, and they also had that hack of the container management system as well. So there is a kind of a precedent set there. And since then, it's put pressure on the Ports Authority to improve how they deal with it. But realistically, you can't do it all. So what we've got to try and do is, which is now more on my end of things, on the sharp end of the sword, is deter the poaching as much as possible for the charismatic species. Then we need to address the poverty issue around people's daily protein requirements, because if people can't eat, they will jump over your fence or they'll break into your home. And I'm not talking about opportunistic criminals or hijackers in Joburg who are life or career criminals. That's a different beast, and we'll get to dealing with them. But when it comes to the wildlife stuff, there are some distinctions we need to be very, very, very clear about, because we also we've got to be, I think I've mentioned before, we've got to be very careful of using the language of war. When you use a language of war, you make your neighbor, where maybe some of the poachers come from, you make them the target or the enemy. Now, that is not such a good idea if you are going to have those communities be part of conservation. And that's the big battle right now, is why we had that conference as well, is to talk about how do we really address this. So there's a lot we can do in South Africa to deter and disrupt. We've got to stop the poaching syndicates getting to containers. And I think everybody, you can see what's happening at OR Tambo. There have been lots of arrests. For those of you who live in Joburg, East Rand is an area to watch out for. So like from a trend perspective, the East Rand of Johannesburg, there's a lot of processing of rhino horn. That's where a lot of it goes into warehouses before it's transited, and they try and hide it, chop it up, reprocess it. So that's also the other thing, team, that's listening online. Rhino horn, it's a lot of the time it does go in as a horn, it's packed in a certain way, but some of the syndicates actually process it. So they break it up into, they process it, they break it up into smaller blocks and things like that, to make it harder for scanners and things like that. Because one thing to look for a horn, because that will definitely stick out. Another thing completely to look for smaller blocks of things. But if any of you have been to our Tambo lately, you would have noticed there's a lot more dogs there.
A lot more people too. No.
There's been an improvement, and I'm not being political. It's not about Ramaphosa or anybody, but it does seem like things are improving. And we right now, yes, poaching for bushmeat is still high. Commercial poaching for horn and the charismatic species. Another new trend, just to share before we go, and I was kind of heading there, wherever Chinese expatriates go, and now I'm going to say it. So in Mozambique, Maputo, in Dar es Salaam, in Nairobi itself, in Livingstone, in Zambia, Lusaka. If you visit those places, pay attention. You'll see many of them now have dual signage boards, Mandarin and in English or Portuguese. So these expats bring their cultural demands with them, these Chinese expats. And I have to say, so they come with their demands. So some of the stuff that they want to eat and whatever is not all going out to Asia. and not to nail the Americans or the British, but wherever there's a Chinese diaspora or Chinese culture, let's call it, so other parts of Southeast Asia where there's a bit in Vietnam and where there's also minority Chinese populations and Vietnamese, where that diaspora exists in Europe. And this stuff's all available online from credible resources. You can see where the movement of the wildlife products are going because they want to eat it. So right now, pangolin, unfortunately, live pangolin or wet pangolin, not just the pangolin scales that we've heard about, has become a menu item. So some of the guys want to eat it. So I don't want to depress everybody. I can see Ruth.
No, it's just like so, excuse my French, fucking bizarre. It's just not, it's not cricket. It's not cricket. I mean, I've seen these, I mean, we've all seen these videos. I don't know if some of them still exist. You see these people that they eat live octopus, you know, and I mean, I've seen, there was once this website on called rotten.com. I think they've actually taken it down, but some of the stuff as well. I mean, fetuses, I mean, they're just mold and they need to be held accountable for what the last 2 years did to the world. That's my opinion. So we'll see. But the truth is that they've lent us so much money that they basically own us. They have our first mortgage bond in their possession.
Yeah. Lucky some of us don't care about that.
Yes, yes, exactly.
There's still a good fight, and people are fighting. So people are listening. I'm not just saying it to make people smile. There are lots of people, and for some of you who joined later, yes, we've had losses like Anton and Zimba from Timbavati. We've had assassinations. This is real crime. There are people fighting it from different angles. There are some good news stories. The sentencing particularly is a trend that will improve. There are problem children that have to be dealt with in the government that are corrupt, and I'm not talking about the other corruption, but when it comes to wildlife crime. I think there is good movement, and we're kind of seeing a bit of a win now. I mean, and when I say a win, the pragmatist in me will say wildlife crime will never go away. But what we can do is make the cost of conducting that crime so difficult. The more difficult and challenging we make it. And then, Ruth, your point is seminal earlier. Education, education, education. China itself has to be held to account. And one of the ways of doing it is say, okay, if you're not going to arrest the guys and everything, we expect that you're going to throw, because you've got it, you're going to throw 300 billion into education program around appropriate social, cultural consumption or whatever. Because what's happening with rhino here and things like the vaquita porpoise in the Gulf of California or Gulf of Mexico, and that kind of thing is just symptomatic of the pressure at species level. And to answer another question, whenever I talk about this, people say, okay, so you're talking about the species. I said, well, think about it like this. If you take, like Botswana was for a while, if you lose all the rhino in a country, that country's ecotourism destinations move from being big five, which are marketable as a tourism photographic safari. Now it's a big four. Now people are like, well, I want to see all the big five. So you lose that. That's the socioeconomic end of it. And then, of course, there's the other end of it. All of these species we're talking about have a function in the ecosystem. They play a role. So when you lose them, you lose something. You don't just lose this physical thing. You lose their value in the ecosystem. And rhinos, white rhino are bulk grazers. We know they have an influence on the system, the ecosystem. But yeah, anyway, I don't want to over.
Yeah, I think Corona's Boring, go back to one of our earlier streams with Ashwell. I think he did speak about the mammoth, the DNA mixing. I think we did talk about that before. But yes, if you want to hear more of Ashwell, I have done 2 more streams with him. So go back on my videos, or we'll try and post the links to those into this one, and then you can get a full-on 100, not 50-50, 100. 360 dimension of everything wildlife and how it all integrates. And yeah, but thank you so much. It's an amazing people like you who keep the hope alive, and you go out there and you make a difference. So thank you.
No, thanks very much. And thanks for the questions, everybody. Yeah, we'll chat again. And yeah, just keep up your own good fights. And remember, you don't have to be on the front line either. You can make a difference by being at home. Choose a cause that you believe in. I always say to people, even if you've got a 9-to-5 job or 8-to-5 job and you can't physically do something, network, share, talk to your friends. It's not always about donating money either. It's also not about that, but get people involved, be a champion in your own way. And one of the best ways is comms, getting people talking about the stories, get them aware. And yeah, it doesn't always have to be rugby and braais and all of that. When you're at the braai, talk about things, talk about stuff like this. The more we get the news out there, the better. And there are some good news stories, I promise you.
All right. Awesome
okay, Ruth.
Thank you, everybody. Team. Ash, 2 minutes. Cheers, everybody. TTFN. Thursday night, we'll have the Weather Hooligan on. That should be fun. And I hope to see you guys there. Cheers, everybody. Bye. And